Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast. We return for a late edition of Last Word on Spurs as we're guiding and steering you through to, of course, Tottenham Hotspur's next challenge in the Premier League against Nottingham Forest to come. It is once again a reunion with Nuno Espirito Santo. Help me do that. I'm joined by a star-studded returning panel here. Couple of singers, an Irishman who tells you exactly what you need to hear on all things Tottenham. Delighted to have back on the show, a man for all his sins at Tottenham. He's seen it all during the years. Has he seen a season like this? He must have done. Jah Wobble is back before he goes back on tour. Sorry, John, to bring you back off tour. How are you?
I'm good, yeah. I've seen all this before. I saw us go down, and we're mathematically safe today. So this is a day to celebrate. We're not going down unless we have some weird point. Unless we have some weird points deduction,
nothing would surprise anymore this season, John.
Nothing. No, with Tottenham, anything could happen. Anything could happen.
But John, bringing a positive vibe there to start with Tottenham, as we are in mid-April. I can tell you, breaking news on Last One on Spurs. But they've had to say this in the last 7-8 years, as John has said there. We are mathematically staying up. It means the only way is up on this show. Also
and before May, we're before May. What a great season! We're safe before May. Yeah,
breaking all records.
Yeah.
Back on the show also along Jah Wobble. I'm also joined by the wonderful Irishman that he is. David Harris is back on the show. How are you, D? Lovely to have you here.
Good evening, my fellow European semi-finalist. Good to be back. I'm absolutely buzzing, and happy Easter to everybody.
Thank you, Dee, for bringing some calming and composure to the proceedings. Thank you so much. Also back on the show, it's going to be the musical theme, this one. We're going over to Spurs Stadium singer Tim Winstone back in the stadium for Nottingham Forest, of course, tonight. For this is an audio. Tim, thank you so much. This will be one of the more easier gigs I've given you this season, right, compared to what you've had to go through at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Yeah, it's been, as I say, hello, all the listeners and followers of Last One Spurs. It's great to be back. It's great to be on with the legend that is Jah Wobble. So, when you said two singers, I mean, I'm talking a pub singer and an actual proper singer. But no, mate, it's been a tough season, as I said in the green room before, playing after a Leicester and Ipswich defeat. When you sort of look at it, you think, come on, we got to play for an hour and a half after, it'll be fine. It was either a wedding march or a funeral where you look at it, right? But no, hopefully tomorrow, the atmosphere, I hope it'll be good because it was a great performance on Thursday. And I just sort of hope it spares us on for the rest of the season now. But I'm sure we'll get into this later. But it's great to be on with Jah. And obviously, I speak to Dave a lot, Irish Hotspur. So, yeah, good to be on with you guys. And it's good to have a bank holiday Easter without any kids in the house, which is a right result.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right for some. On that point, you would have heard some of Tim's songs there being played in the intro. We have a few, obviously, during the midpoint of the show for listeners and audio and then outro as well. Tim will be selecting those, so he'll tell me after which ones are going in. So I'm sure they were brilliant on the intro to this show and the mid-flow and the outro for our listeners and audio. Look, guys, it's been an interesting week in the Spurs community, it's fair to say. I think I'm having a good time, but I think I'm getting a lot of interesting comments over in Australia. Fellow love to all my Australians over there. Flying the flag high for POSTECOGLOU. And why shouldn't they? I mean, Spurs, let's take ourselves forward now to where we are. Spurs have reached 4 semi-finals since the departure of Mauricio Pochettino, who left in 2019. And POSTECOGLOU is responsible for 2 of them. 12 wins in 19 cup fixtures this season. We'll try and forget the fact that we've slipped down to 16th across the weekend in the Premier League. Yep, I still can't believe sometimes what I've come out with on this show. John, where are we in life of Tottenham, in your mind? A semi-final, which we should be rightly getting excited about. What have you made about this last week or so being a Spurs fan? It's been crazy.
Well, a couple of images. Going to the Eintracht game, the first leg at home. And I normally go on the Vic line nowadays, but that was out of it. It was up the wall. So I went away to Liverpool Street and come up the way I used to do over the years. To White Hart Lane, and from when I was very young, and it felt right that night. It was a sultry night, warmer than it is this weekend. It was nice. We play in all white. It felt like a throwback to some of the great European nights of the 70s that I enjoyed when we won the UEFA Cup in 72, and in the 80s when we beat Anderlecht. That vibe, that feeling. at the end of the night, it was a disappointing result. 1-1. I felt we needed to win. I think we all did. And so I didn't hold out much hope. So I had this feeling of optimism before that first leg, and then that diminished. I was surprised how many people were optimistic for the second leg, seeing our track record is that we fold normally in these situations. We know that. But it was a really strong performance. Very puzzling because we had Ange saying he wasn't ever going to change the way he approached games, so that, Spurs fans, we're cast as the fickle, moany, negative kind of mob who don't know anything. We're pretty patient, actually, compared to a lot of fans. And, very loyal fans as well, keep attending games. And we're being painted as the bad guys, kind of getting fed up and finding the approach at times very naive, this all guns blazing approach, charging the light brigade. And it was a really sensible performance. Individually, they all played well. They were compact. I think they had 40% possession or something against a pretty decent team, So I'm happy with that. It doesn't forgive everything, but it does forgive a multitude of sins. All's well that ends well, And if you win something, we don't care how we win it. If we could win this cup, that's fantastic. And you never know what's going on at Tottenham. The comms are terrible, so it looks like this Munn supposedly is leaving, but you never really know. Ange Postecoglou's worst side, where he says kind of, he's a bit abrasive and a bit rude and all that stuff. That's exacerbated because there's nothing ever said by the club. Do you know what I mean? So he's not able to be placed in a context of being a spokesman within a very particular context. It's just free form. The comms from the club as ever are terrible. Whereas if it was me, if I was Daniel Levy, I would just think I've got to say something. I'm responsible for this club, for the guardianship of Tottenham Hotspur, and I'm going to come out and I'm going to say something. I'm going to prepare a statement. And this would have been done a while ago. You might say something like, look, just stick with us. We've ditched so many managers. Let's stick with this guy. The players still believe in him, and it does look like that. I saw all the rumours that the senior pros were turning against him, which I would have expected, but it looks like that isn't the case. It looks like they're loyal to him still, which speaks volumes, about how things are on a training ground. So right now I'm happy. I was amazed, we played as well as we did, because I'd finally given up, with that away leg against Alkmaar where we just surrendered, Liverpool where we surrendered, and even these last few games when we've got you couldn't blame injuries anymore, and we were just playing sucked off. What I loved was we finished with 5 at the back. Love it,
I agree.
Fantastic, we're set up to, it's not going to be easy against this other team. We're not going to come through with a 10-3 aggregate, are we? We've got to go and play on it. They've got a plucky pitch. They play on a plucky pitch, an artificial pitch up near the Arctic Circle. That's got Tottenham Hotspur Football Club written all over it, hasn't it? That's Tamworth. It's got written Tamworth written all over it.
Remember Young Boys?
Yeah, so we've all seen that. So let's see if they can go out there. It looked like, I know Romero took some flack for walking off quickly against Wolves, but he looked really happy after this one. And I don't blame these players for wanting to get down the tunnel, because if I've had a stinker, if I've had a mare, and I'm really not happy with the performance generally, I don't want to stand there going, to the fans, because I feel false. So I don't mind players just disappear. I want to get away, gather me thoughts. And he did look really happy as he did a secret fist pump. Yes, and it looked like there was some belief there. And I'll shut up after this, but I remember well in the 80s with Alex Ferguson. Man United were a laughing stock. Everyone loved it that they couldn't get it together. And he had 3 or 4 seasons. He finished, I think, like 15th, 16th, 14th. Definitely, he was mid to lower league table. Really woeful performances. He was about to get the axe. It was definitely going to happen. He was going to get the sack, and then it suddenly changed. And football changes with one game. But by the way, I don't think that, as I say, the narrative is that we're all misunderstanding of Ange. We're horrible. We're nasty. We're bad people. Tottenham fans. We want Arsenal to lose more than all that rubbish. Like as if they wouldn't be the same in the same situation. All this crazy stuff. And the comms from the club are terrible, and they still are. So it's all down to Ange, and maybe he's going to be this one guy that's got to carry all the negativity and sort of somehow turn it around, some sort of King Canute kind of character that finally turns the negative tide round or something. I don't know, But look, I was really happy the other night. I was buzzing. I had trouble dropping off to sleep, which is unusual. I had adrenaline. I did standing cardio exercises throughout the second half, quite vigorous actually, which was as you can, do it all, pulling the rope and all this sort of stuff, just which I found maintained the adrenaline flow quite well. It it suppressed it, so it's breathing deep and all that. I never cheer the goals at home now anymore because I think something will go wrong. Someone, even with the penalty, someone's encroached. I just fear the worst. It's only when I know the game's definitely over I let out the primal scream that awoke the neighbourhood. Yeah,
Oh, missed you, Jah Wobble. We've missed you. We're going to come out in a jar shortly. Dee, let me come over to you. I think, to be fair, you've been one of the most consistent voices on Last Word on Spurs really across the season. That I wouldn't say you've gone as far as, vehemently defending the performance under Ange Postecoglou, but you've been vehemently of the case that what Postecoglou has been given in terms of recruitment, in terms of the hand he's been dealt, you've been very sympathetic towards what the man's having to work with. And in all honesty, having to try and put together a team from, look, you can't get away from it. Exactly 6 years after that iconic win at the Etihad, Spurs did produce another magic European night, of course, with that win that we saw last week in Frankfurt. Aside that third in the Bundesliga, I think they've only really conceded really they've only conceded a handful of goals at home. So if we're going to be honest with you about that. And, it's a reminder that, when Tottenham do play to their absolute best capability, they are, in aid of getting a result as we've seen. And I think, as Jar said there, it's a very much streetwise performance from Tottenham. It was true, as we've seen with Ange Postecoglou, that narrative about there's only one way of playing, there was an adaptation there. I mean, look, we have seen glimpses of it this season. We saw it against Brentford. We saw it against City. So it wouldn't be Liverpool. That's fair. Yeah, I mean, it would be unfair to say he's only got one way of playing, but I think, the frustration would have been that we've not seen this on a more regular occurrence. I mean, where does this leave you, Dee, in your mind with regards to what the future does hold for Spurs now in general under Ange, and whether we can now go all the way in this competition? Because I think...
But Ricky, I've got to say, sorry to interrupt. Okay, you've just said it's unfair to sort of say he's only got one way of playing. He's the one who said he only had one way of playing. So we're trying to surmise all, from what we watch, because he doesn't say something like, look, sometimes, mate, you got to shut up shot in football. You grind it. He doesn't say stuff like that. He might think it. He doesn't say it. So we're second guessing. So the Brentford game, the only two games I've seen him really play like that were Brentford and Eintracht away like that. Did see him keep it quite tight at the back. City in the cup and Liverpool in the cup was quite good. But we had a couple of breaks in those games. But for the actual grit and having very little possession, Brentford and Eintracht Frankfurt were the two for me, where you're really playing football on the break. Very very canny. Very very canny. It's not good enough for the elite level. You got to keep possession better than that, really. But it's a start. We all know that having a solid defence, that's a good start. It worries me our lack of. We still look powder puff up front. I thought the other night, to be honest, well, I mean, not enough pace, not enough drive. Sorry to always say so much, but I have to say the communications here. It's not us. The fans communicate quite clearly, but the club and the manager is not a great communicator. He's a bit sulky, So you got to second guess where he's at. Do you know what I mean?
Pick up on the back of that day, Dee, for you. Where are you in your mind on the back of this last 7 days? We've just seen a lot of people maybe change their mind with regards to Ange and even Spurs, really, if we do go on to win this trophy.
Yeah, look, do you know what? I think one thing that really stuck out to me before the game was Mickey Van de Ven's press conference, where he said, look, we want to try and win this for Ange Postecoglou. Johnson has said similar this season. Kulu has come out in defence. Spence on the Rio Ferdinand interview. Madison has ushered similar, where they're all saying, look, we like Postecoglou. We want to play for him. We're not looking for a different way of playing, etc., etc., that they're all committed to this project and committed to what Postecoglou is trying to do here. And I found that very, very interesting. And when I actually sat there and thought about it, I was like, why? Why after all these games that we've lost, maybe it's proof that it's not working. Why are they still playing for him? And then, I sat there and I thought about it. Well, in fairness, Postecoglou has been out there all season long. He has not thrown any players under the bus to a large degree. He's took all the onus for the recruitment and everything else that's gone on inside this club this season. He has shielded absolutely everybody inside that club. All the attention has gone on him and all the blame has gone on him. And if there's a guy out there doing that for you internally, you're going to garner a lot of respect from the people with inside the football club. A lot of people are questioning why has he been given so much rope compared to other managers? But that's potentially why, because I've said this season, he's taken a lot of responsibility for the football club, to the point where everyone was absolutely pinning everything on him and to the point where no one was really highlighting, the internal issues. And that's one thing that I've been trying to do all season long. It's like, yes, we can go down the same route and pin absolutely everything on the manager. Yet again, we've done that with Jose Mourinho, Nuno, Conte, and now Postecoglou. And it's like at Tottenham, we don't hire bad managers. We hire good managers, but it always goes sour when they're in the dugout. And that's where I think, I find it important to start highlighting where we need to fix inside the club so that we can give these managers a real chance to succeed. But Postecoglou, like I said, has garnered a lot of respect from inside the club, from the people. And I think with the outpour of emotion after the game, you can clearly see that them players, despite how I feel or anybody else out there feels, them players and them coaching staff, the hugs, the scenes and everything else, the jubilation, they clearly wanted to win that for Postecoglou. There was that sort of togetherness. And I think once you have that, and once you have internally players and the staff still fighting for you, I think you've always got a chance of coming out of it. I think that's the big difference now than with Nuno, Conte and Jose Mourinho. They lost the dressing room. They lost people inside the club. Postecoglou hasn't. And I think the big difference again is because he's been out there shielding everyone in the press conference, whereas Jose and Conte and that couldn't wait to throw people under the bus inside the club in the press conferences. So I think that's why Postecoglou's still here. And I just hope that maybe that win on Thursday night can sort of be that galvanizing victory that everybody needed, to believe in and sort of push forward, especially internally, where you may be seeing a bit of everything coming together. The players dug in, dug deep. They fought for everything. Postecoglou changed a little bit. And maybe it's just that victory that, say, Pochettino had back then. If anyone remembers, against Aston Villa, Harry Kane deflected free kick, sort of saved his job, and we never looked back. Jah pointed to it with Sir Alex Ferguson at Man United. I think he ended up going on and winning an FA Cup when they were due to sack him and bring in, I think, Nigel Clark to replace him. And look what he went on to do. And maybe I'm hoping that this can be that sort of victory that can really spur us on. At the end of the day, I still think many Spurs fans are putting the pressure on him of winning that Europa League. I think if he doesn't, I think he will pay the price. But I think if he wins it, and I've said this, I think you have to give him next season. He'll be the most successful manager at this football club since 1984. And he's done it in a way where he's protected absolutely everybody. And you would hope then that going into next season, off the back of it, he would get the proper recruitment, the right recruitment that we need. Because if he goes on a winner, I think then you have to maybe pay credence to, the injuries that have happened this season, how much it can really affect you. You also look at the recruitment. The recruitment that we brought in the summer was young. They weren't ready here and now, so they were almost learning on the job. But when you're thrown in, when you've got all your senior players injured, it becomes harder. And I think that's why everyone's, internally is still behind Postecoglou, because he's been a shield for everybody. So I think it'd be very interesting to see what happens from here on out. We've got Bodo Glimt in the semi-final. I don't think that's going to be easy, by the way. I'm not sitting here counting my chickens on that. They've had some huge upsets, and especially away from home on that plastic pitch. You spoke about young boys, Ricky. I think I walked in from football training all them years ago. I think it was 2011, 2010, 3-0 down at halftime. I couldn't believe it. Honestly, I couldn't believe it. 3-0 down at halftime. We ended up winning the home game. And I think that tie is going to have to pan out the exact same. We're going to have to, clock goes up at home and look to go away. But also, with the pressure around it heading into that game, Postecoglou's future on the line, the players felt the pressure, the staff were feeling the pressure and everything else. I just think it's one of them that if you can come out the right side of it, I think it brings everybody together as well. I think it brings a togetherness inside. And I think that togetherness is exactly what we've been missing, especially between coach and players. And that can take you a long, long way. You look at what Pochettino had with his players, that sort of connection. That all took him all the way to a Champions League final. And I think it could be the same here with POSTECOGLOU. I think that could be the victory that he needed to kick on.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, coming over to you, Tim, it's an interesting time as a Spurs fan. I mean, Tim, when is it ever a dull moment, right? Dave has highlighted a number of things there with regards to Ange POSTECOGLOU. I think, I don't think I've ever seen a fan base like Spurs. I'm so divided about what the future looks like for a manager if they were to go on and win a trophy. And just to be clear, Ange POSTECOGLOU is, as Dave eloquently put it, does go on to win the Europa League. He's the first manager in over 40 years that has delivered Tottenham a European trophy. And, there's obviously a huge section of fans that maybe feel, there's no doubt about it, some feel that even if he was to still win that European trophy, they would like to see him part ways at the end of the season and maybe go another direction. There are some, like, David suggested there, that if he does go to win the European trophy, does that maybe partially mitigate what he's had to deal with throughout the season, the injury crisis, maybe not having a proper squad going into the season, where, again, just to balance this out, Ange did say at the start of the season he was quite happy with the squad and did also say that he wanted something to change for the title. We're going back a long time ago. These are Ange POSTECOGLOU's words. I mean, where are you, Tim, and what's taken place over the last 4 or 5 days as a Spurs fan? It's a lot to process, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, the comedy thing is I've but I've watched the last 3 games. The first leg with previous team we played at home, the Cheltenham. So I watched on the phone. The second one at a work like kickoff sales event, watched it on the phone. This time at a reseller event in Canary Wharf. So I mean, this clay pigeon shooting thing, and this time I was like, no chance. I took a laptop, took my Spurs top, got hell's abuse from a load of United fans and stuff. But it was an amazing night, and I just think it's for me, it's a bit like the Champions League final was a sliding doors moment for me. So Liverpool went on to win it, and look what they went on to do. We lose it. Pochettino's out of the job within about 6 months. We buy some terrible players. All admitted, everyone was after. Who's the guy that's
Van Gaal.
No, as in our midfielder. I've literally had a memory blank here. The worst signing we've ever had. 60 million quid.
Of midfield, Ndombele, Lo Celso.
I got them already. Right,
it's such a long list. I could keep going. Gedson.
we go on to buy these like awful players, Pochettino, and it just died a death, didn't it? Because I know we were terrible in the season, towards the end of the season, towards the Champions League final, but it was a sliding doors moment. So you sort of think now we're never going to have a better chance. Admittedly, it's a tough semi, but you'd hope we'd be able to get through to a final. You win a final, and it's just the effect I think you can have on players, like the belief, it gets the monkey off the back. So it's such a difficult one, isn't it? I don't think has any team ever won Europa League and then finished like 16th or 17th domestically. Has that ever happened in any European competition? Because I can't imagine it has. It's just insane.
It is mad. I mean, it is quite. Where do you stand, Tim, on the whole debate at the moment with regards to the manager? For you, I don't mind. I hope your mum is saying you're quite. You're quite a moderate fan. You're not someone that with all due respect, is someone that is quite aggressive or passive aggressive when it comes to Spurs. You do go into it because you love the football club. You want to see the football club do well. So, I mean, what's your emotions at the moment with it all?
I've always been a big fan of it because even when he sort of played up the stadium and stuff, like under Conte, we were the first 5 gigs I did. We won all 5 games. And I remember sitting watching the Wolves game at home when Harry Kane scored. I think we won 1-0. When we just got Champions, it was goddamn awful. So I'm sure the other guys that go to the games as well, when you're up there close and you're seeing this awful football, you're thinking we're winning, but come on. So when Ange came in, it was a breath of fresh air. Obviously, we had the Chelsea game and it all fell apart. But I've started to lose belief, if I'm honest. So last season we had the injury crisis, and then we dipped, but then we did come back a bit. Finished 5th. I thought it was a respectable finish for the first season with the injuries we had. This season, I know we've had a lot more injuries, but it has just been an absolute car crash. And in my mind, I sort of felt he'd lost the players, and then you sort of see. I watched some of the stuff on YouTube, like the scenes at the final whistle, and obviously they are still playing for him. So I kind of agree with Dave, really. But when you lose the dressing room, you're gone, aren't you? That's it. But it just, if he was ever going to lose the dressing room, it'd be a season when we've lost 17 league games, where it is. So I think if he wins it, I think I'd like to see another season just to see what he could do with the fully fit squad, and more importantly, a team that believes they can win because they have won. and they've got the monkey off the back. The shackles should be off. If it doesn't work, then it's never going to work. But I can understand different sides of the story, it's such a difficult one to answer, really. But having got through, this is the point. I thought Lazio would lose, and then obviously got to penalties. And I thought, well, they're going to win now, and we'll probably go out to Lazio. But you're not going to have a better chance against a European final.
No,
at all, ever. And winning it, because what would you rather have, Man United or Bilbao at their home? Basically, it's a tough one either way. But to have this opportunity, and the fact that we're nowhere in the league, they're just going to focus on the Europa League now, and to get a Champions League place. It's sliding doors moment, isn't it? We have no Europe, or we go to Champions League. It's insane, mate. So I'm sort of on the fence. I was more Ange out, and now I'm kind of like, well, if he wins it, give him another season. It's kind of where we're at.
It's funny, Tim. I think you're kind of come to that point you've just said there about how your mood has changed. It does feel like I've seen a massive change in a lot of Tottenham fans. Not all Tottenham fans, but in the last week or so, I know there's some saying on this point, Jar, despite the fact that we've slipped down to 16th in the Premier League, that how could you even think about sacking a manager that's delivered you a European trophy for the first time in over 40 years? Which, again, on the side of the trophy aspect, you can understand. But I think, there's not a lot of Tottenham fans that would have been used to losing, 17 games in the Premier League, 21 in all competitions, 10 defeats away out of a possible 16. What I will just say is, I think in the past, as Tottenham fans, I don't know if you guys would agree on this. I think when we've said in the past, or not everyone has maybe said this, I know I've said this in the past, that I would take winning a trophy and not being relegated. I think it's only when you're actually in that season and you've had defeat after defeat after defeat, and it mentally, I think, as a fan, drains you, to then have to keep coming back and rising yourself up to go again. It's a very, very odd situation to be in, and one that I think until you're in it, like we've been this season, it's very hard to comprehend. I mean, John, you said it yourself. You've seen this team in your time get relegated, come back up. I mean, where are you in your mind, Jar? If Ange Postecoglou wins the Europa League, does he get next season in your mind, or do you just feel you've seen enough over these last 18, 19 months from a tactical perspective to feel that we could and should need to do better with a manager that would have to obviously raise his team to play in the Champions League? I mean, it's a very, very interesting debate, because it feels like, we had this conversation 2 weeks ago. There'd be a lot of a different mood around this conversation, whereas now it feels like there's been a bit of a shift. How do you feel about this conversation or this question?
Well, before I answer that, I have to say I could forget this quite easy. This season in the Europa League, both Tottenham and United are very, very lucky that the top teams didn't come down from the Champions League this year. I think that's the first. So thank God for that. Thank God for that. And what Tim was saying, I was trying to rack my brains. The nearest I could come to was Fulham. Do you remember Fulham got to the final of the Europa?
Yeah. Juve in the semis.
Yeah, but you've been in the semis. Yeah.
So I bet you there has been. I bet you there's teams that have won. You've been as low as 9th or 10th or something. And I know there's been FA Cup finalists who were battling relegation. That's for sure. But I suppose
West Ham as well. West Ham, to be fair,
that's the Farmers Cup. Forget the Farmers Cup. I mean, come on, you got to take that.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right. But with Big Ange, I suppose his argument would be. So before I answer the question, his argument, I guess, would be when you're changing the culture, you stick to a plan, come hell or high water. You don't go changing certain basic principles, and you believe those principles will come through. And I think we all bought into that at first, and we had a very good start. We did have the rub of the green in those first 10 games with him. And then we come to the Chelsea game, and it all fell apart. And what bothered me about that was the high emotion. I felt we didn't handle the emotion that night. I was at the game, and I just felt Chelsea was actually. Everyone sort of said, the sending offs changed it, and they did. The sending off of Romero was, it's 50-50. A lot of the time, a guy won't even get carded in that situation, let alone get a red. the ref was really looking for him, I think, you know. But I think that Chelsea was starting to get control of the midfield anyway in that game. And they were kind of closing us down and they were starting to match us, you know, and we started to wilt and we couldn't really take it, you know. And so we then suffered a season, more than a season and a half, and it's got worse and worse, where we've seen this attacking style where the wingers are up high, the fullbacks are inverting, and everybody knows we play that way. And it was a fair deduction to make, on which most of us did, that he was out of his depth tactically in the Premier League. And I would still say that because that's what my eyes tell me. My eyes also told me that, you know, you've got players like Van der Ven having to make Olympian sprints throughout a game. Guess what's going to happen? Your hamstrings are going to go. You know, so that's the other.
That 15-minute sprint to get back in that tackle. It's exactly you're relying on one man.
Exactly it. I think you can get away with one or two of those situations in a game, but you can't be constantly doing it. It reminded me of the midfield version of that, Scotty Parker, when he was playing for us. When Scotty Parker played for us, his job was to put fires out for us. That's it. So he spent all day trying to put fires out with a slightly dodgy defence in that little era at times, you know. Yeah. But with Ange now, you know, with the 2 games, not even the Liverpool at home. I'm not even counting the Milk Cup, the Carabao Cup games. Brentford away, funny enough, and Eintracht away, where you played sensible football, where you're compact, where you defend your area, where you win your individual duels. You know, and if he's willing to do that, it looked to me like maybe he's listening to the coaching staff. You know, because this is not Ange ball. This is not. He's not known for playing that kind of practical football. Yeah. So, you know, maybe somebody said to him, listen, you're going to get the fucking sack, you mug. You know, you're going to get the sack. You know, you can carry on like this and, you know, so, you know, why not, you know, if you're sensible here, come on, just do the sensible thing. And then maybe in the fine, you know, when the time's right, we'll start playing the attacking football again, you know. And we need to be more expansive at times than we were last week. But sometimes you've got to take every game as it comes and be practical. I would like us tomorrow night against Forest, by the way, to go out. Tonight. So tonight we sit deep. Okay, you're Forest, you're a counter-attacking team. What are you going to do when we sit deep? Yeah? Yeah, what are you going to do when we sit deep and we're hard to break down? What have you got? Show us what you got and we'll pick you off. Because the pressure's on you to get back in the top 5. So true. You know, so true. And that, rather than, well, we've got nothing to lose now because we're in the semi-finals, so we might as well go out there. Okay, Porro and you, Udogie, you know, Spence, you sit it out because I don't rate you anyway. You know, even though he's the best fullback at the club by a mile, but never mind. I don't care about the other night. He's still the best fullback at the club. So you know, so our fullbacks invert, and guess what? We get beat 4-0 by Forest, and then we all say, oh, it doesn't really matter because you know we're not going to get relegated, and he needs to save the players. I'd like to see him use this as a training regime for Bode away, you know, the glimpse away in Norway, you know, basically, you know, that's what I'd like to see.
The point, do you want to say that, you know, you said about like he's done the sort of Brentford performance, because I thought this. He's doing that now. He's got. It's not the excuse of we got injuries now, is it? That was with a.
He's got the players back. The players back.
And he's done it this time. That's kind of like hopefully maybe is a bit of a step change. The fact that he's done it on a full strength team, take out Sonny maybe, but
I just think there needs to be a realization.
But we've not mentioned. So sorry, Dave. Go on, mate.
No, I just think there needs to be a realization on Postecoglou's behalf. I think when we're coming out for the first 45 minutes trying to press the opposition and stuff, fine, I'll play out from the back. I'm okay with that to a certain degree. But it's the way I think what he needs to realize in the second half, it's very hard to keep going that way. And unless you have the bench that's willing to come off and do that, and you're willing to make your subs maybe a bit earlier as well, then that way in the second half, and I think more so away from home, you do have to set up a little bit differently to try and, you know, contain what you've got and stuff. And just lastly, quickly as well, I want to come back on to, you know, Postecoglou maybe next season. I do think that if he is to win a Europa League, and look, in football, it's all about recency bias. What have you done for me lately? That's what football is all about.
Yeah,
I think if he wins that, I think the media coverage of POSTECOGLOU himself starts to change. I think then that starts to change people's opinions. But the reality is, if we win a Europa League, we're going to be down that Tottenham High Road with the Spurs flag painted on our chest and a flare out our ass. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, no one's really going to sit there and go, oh, should he be here next season? Should he not? We're just going to be sitting there enjoying the moment and celebrating. That's the truth of it.
Well, if it happens,
our Jack Grealish moments, aren't we?
Yeah, well, if it happens, we would have really earned it, because you're either going to beat United in the final, and that bothers me. We're beaten 3 times. I might meet him for a 4th time.
Yeah.
You know,
that worries me, John, because I think, when do we ever beat United 3 times in a season?
Exactly.
And the way they came back as well. The way they came back as well.
I know.
They've still. You have to say that not many teams could do that when that atmosphere kicks in at Old Trafford, and the belief, and suddenly you want them believing in themselves again, which you don't really want. But if it's a tough ask for them to go to beat Bilbao, and if we go there and beat Bilbao, that will be similar. That'll be even better than Arsenal beating Liverpool to win the league on their ground at Anfield in '89 or wherever it was. You know, that takes some bottle to go there. So if we're celebrating, it would be whoever we play, we would have really earned it. But very lucky this year, as I said earlier, because the top teams haven't come down, and that's great. And so it's kept it a really poor. It's definitely like the way the Europa League seemed to be years ago in the early stages. Lots of, really mediocre, not really elite teams. And who cares? It's still a major European trophy. And if we win it, as far as I'm concerned, all sins are forgiven. And you start again. I've got no problem with that. If it was a good owner, he would have already had a conversation. But a good owner, not Levy, would say, "Listen, come in my office. Look, if it was me, and it's just me. If it was me, I would say, look, are you going to be a cunt next season and keep with this attacking football non-stop? Because it's really fucking tiresome. I'm going to fucking sack you if you say yes. So if you say I'll sack you. If not, are you willing to mix it up a bit and all that? And are we good with that? Otherwise, I'll fucking sack you now. And if you didn't like it, then fuck off, you cunt. See ya. No problem then. And you're done. Yeah, just man to man in the office with the door closed. Get it sorted. Yeah.
Joe, I hope you're HR as well in that situation.
If we are being taken over by the Saudis or the Arabs, can I say, please don't know further than Jah Wobble was our next chairman, because that'll be live and direct, very clear to what you need. That's what you need.
Yeah,
it's very straightforward. It's very straightforward. And I'd say to him, I'm not a football expert, but that is, that ain't going to work. So you can have a bit of that. You can mix it up. It just maddens me, because it's like some of the academy football I've seen, where they talk about the syllabus. Some of these academy coaches, my boy was at a couple of academies, years ago, and they talk about the syllabus. And I said to one of them, well, you're getting the keeper to roll it out, and they're getting bullied by bigger boys playing up in the age group and all that, and you're not doing anything in the last third. Just a conversation. And he said, "Oh, that's a fair comment. We haven't covered that in the syllabus yet." So it's nuts. And what you do, your keeper starts hitting it long. They stop pressing when you do that. Maybe you bring Richarlison on as well, and bring him up, say, for the free, you come in the middle, you start bullying the centre halves a little bit, and then when they lay off, then you roll it out, and then you do it. You just have some common sense. And I think players left to their own devices. And what I thought the other night, what I liked about that victory as much as anything, I felt the players were making the decisions the other night. I felt they made the decisions on the pitch.
The fascinating thing about that is, John, you say that is because Jed Spence was quite clear in an interview that he did Rio Ferdinand, which I know you said also you listened to, is that Spencer's almost alluded to on there that, they mustn't ever, whatever they mustn't do, mustn't deviate away from the plan. They have to follow exactly the precise instructions that Ange wants them to. And as long as they are following those instructions, they will not get a bollocking from the manager. So look, it's going to be an interesting...
Well, the other night, though, that wasn't Ange ball. That's the thing that gives me encouragement. It wasn't Ange ball. They were kicking it long towards the end. They were just booting it out. you know,
I think
and
that's
that's
what's going to
fine,
make.
you know.
This is what's going to make the next few months absolutely fascinating, and why definitely I am going to need a summer holiday very quickly at the end of the season before I come back to see what I do. And Dave was like, "Yeah, you do need a summer holiday. You are going to need one to come back to this." I'm not sure what we're going to come back to. Just in terms of, like I say, for Spurs' next opponents in Bodo Glimt, it's really important that we don't underestimate them. They're no nugs. They've beaten along their route. The likes of, well, in the last few years, they've beaten Celtic, Besiktas, Porto, Roma, Galatasaray, Lazio in recent seasons. And they've also pushed Man United quite hard as well. They've scored 27 goals in the 14 Europa League games. Their manager, Kittel Knutsen, was linked with a Brighton pre and post De Zerbi. So they won't be no pushovers. But at the same time, they're not, with all due respect, a sleeping giant. This is a side that, in terms of the last 2 years, they've lost to likes of Club Rouge, Lech Poznan, PSV, Zurich, Twente, Karabag. So they are beatable, but I think it's going to be an interesting next few weeks as we, like I say, are going to look ahead to move to Forest on this show. But I mean, look, some interesting quotes that have come out of Andrew's recent press conferences, hit back at criticism suggesting that playing kids all year and the fact that the negative stuff has been balanced by the positives. He believes some people will never give him credit for adapting his in-game tactics, as that doesn't fit his narratives. And he also does believe the club should firmly stick with their current transfer strategy despite a challenging season in the Premier League. And I will come to you, if I can, Dave, on this next part about the club strategy, because we are understanding the case that Scott Munn, the club's chief football officer, is expected to be departing the club in the imminent future. It looks like he is going to carry the can for the injury crisis, having also led to the review that ended with the exit of long-serving head of medicine at Tottenham, Jeff Scott, who left last year. Spurs, as we know, they've already made a couple of reshuffles in that boardroom, one of them being Vinay Venkatesham, who was announced as the new chief executive. He's set to start in the summer. Munn, really, again, haven't really heard too much about him. He's another one that's joined the boardroom that really, you were expected to have somebody there as a figurehead that was you'd hopefully interact with the fans and give us a bit of knowledge of what's going on behind the scenes. But really, it's been anything but that. Ange did say ahead of the game against Forest that Munn does a lot of valuable work behind the scenes. He said, look, I don't think it's much behind the scenes pre-evident what he does. He's in charge of pretty much all the footballing matters, particularly from an administration standpoint. He's in charge of various departments, football operations. I deal with him probably on a daily basis. He works really, really hard. He's very diligent with everything he does. He knows what we need to build here. It's an important part of what we're doing. I just think you don't see much because he's working in the shadows, but he's a massive, massive part of, any football club, particularly this one, and that's the role Scott does play here. I mean, what do you make of this, Dave? The fact that Munn is expected to depart, and obviously we've got Vinay Venkatesham that will be joining in the summer. Is that pretty much a full conclusion in your mind?
Yeah, I think so. I wonder as well with Johan Lang follow up, maybe Paratici coming back in to a certain degree. But look, I'm not. The problem we've got with the guys that we're putting in these positions, they're not real proper footballing men. Scott Munn has a history of growing, other sports in Australia, the women's game in Australia, being part of the Olympics out there, stuff like that. This guy, Vinay, whatever you want to call him, he's coming in. He's got more of a career in finance than what he actually does in terms of, building a football club and stuff like that. And I think that's probably our biggest problem. You're bringing in guys that aren't real footballing men, and I think that's where Daniel Levy probably fails to a certain degree. I think, he knows how to build a club up to a certain point, Daniel Levy, but I honestly don't think he knows how to really kick it on from here to challenge consistently, because he's too busy looking at the finances. He's not really looking at getting the best in class. If he lets the finance dictate his decisions to a large degree. Whereas I think that has to change. If we really want to kick on and challenge, you've got to bring in guys that have experience in and around the game, contacts in and around the game. You can see how crucial it is. When Man United brought in that rugby reject, Woodward, look what happened to them. Look at the decisions they were making, the amount of money they were pissing away on big wages, players, etc., all from his directive. A guy that hasn't got the football knowledge, the contacts in the game. He was being taken advantage of, and I think that's to a degree the same with Tottenham Hotspur. That's our biggest problem. We should be looking at bringing in guys that are football men that have the context, have a history in the game, and stuff like that. But we're too busy looking at guys who can. I'm convinced half the reason why we bought in Scott Munn was Daniel Levy seeing that the women's game was starting to grow, and that's what he wants to capitalize on. I'm fully convinced, because he had an experience of doing that out in Australia for the Aussie rules for the girls' side of the game. He grew that out there exponentially. I'm fully convinced that's why Daniel Levy brought me in here to a certain degree. There's always ulterior motives rather than actually putting the best people in class to give us a proper football club. And the sad thing is, this football club can be a great football club and take all this commercial revenue and actually be a shining light to everyone else around world football on how to run a football club. But, you know, if we're constantly letting the finances dictate what we do, well, there's our problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what will happen with, obviously, Scott Munn, and I'd say we'll update you more on with regards to Tottenham's reshuffling of the boardroom. Tim, I'm going to come over to you and I'll get John's thoughts on it. We understand Spurs are also going to trigger the option for Ben Davies' contract. We'll see him stay at the club for a further year. I think whenever you get news like this of a player that's been at the club long-term and they extend him by a further year, I know some Spurs fans feel it's almost a bit of a lack of an ambition. But you did mention actually a point in the green room, Tim, that, you know, I think he's in the process of actually taking his badges. So maybe Tottenham are having a one eye on Ben to think, could he help us in the coaching aspects when it comes to maybe off the pitch with Tottenham? You know, again, he's 31 years old. He's had around 10 Premier League starts this season. I think the last time, you know, we saw Davies in action is being turned inside out by Ryan Sessegnon in that 2-0 defeat to Fulham. What would you say, Tim, to fans that maybe can't quite understand why you'd give a guy a contract that, with no disrespect, is on the periphery of the squad, maybe take up a squad place where you could bring somebody in, dare I say, you know, from maybe the youth academy, or bring somebody in that they may feel would be a bit more of a, how do I put this, a more of a competent option at centre-back. I'm not saying Ben Davies is making a mistake every week. I'm just saying that the older he gets, the less pace there is as a player there. And I think, again, we've seen a couple of mistakes recently. One being highlighted was, again, that goal against Fulham that I think Ben himself would have wanted to do better on. Where do you stand on that for you, Tim?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? He's been a great clubman for us. I think, like I said, in the green room, I know he's a very intelligent chap. He's got degrees and all sorts, hasn't he? But I think they have got probably one eye on keeping him at the club as a coach. I've got no problem with it if it means he genuinely is a squad player and we're bringing someone else in. As we all know, we never seem to get the amount of players we need. So to have a bit of experience like that, and I'm assuming he's pretty good in the dressing room as well, playing for Wales as well. So I've got no problem with it. I just would only be happy with it if it meant we're going to sign more sort of first team starters, I guess. And he's obviously happy to be utility players. Nothing to say he would even be happy with that. Yeah, he comes into his career, surely he'd want to play the longer you go on. But I mean, it's a mixed one, really. He's made some horrific mistakes recently, but then I've counted other games where he's come in and done really well for us when he's when our back's against the wall. So I think it says more about our transfer policy and probably lack of, as in the statements that came out, that we're probably not going to be signing that many players. Why they would trigger it, and potentially, like I said, the future at the club as well. They want to obviously keep him around. He's a model pro. Again, he can't get personal on people here. He's a model pro.
Yeah. Honestly, he cares. He's
unbelievable.
I mean, there's never been a time where.
So you look at it. Yeah, we have brought in a lot of youth, haven't we? So Archie Gray and the other players. So have an experience that's been there quite a while. I mean, it's not a bad thing for the dressing rooms. I'm guessing they're seeing it as more football reasons. Whether that's right or wrong, people make their own decision on. But it's obviously more than a football reason in my eyes.
Where'd you gauge that for you, John, on that? I can see D's are waiting to come in. I'll go to Jay and then I'll come to you, D, on that point. Where are you in your mind, John, the fact that they're going to trigger Davies' option of a new deal for a year? Does that bother you? Do you feel...
No, I'm not offended. You'll see a lot of Spurs fans, enraged about it. It's fucking shit. He was only ever signed as a reserve left-back anyway. And he's still there when we got rid of all these Danny Rose and, Trippier on the other flank and Walker and blah, blah, blah. He's obviously got something about him. He seems a very likable, smart guy, and I've got nothing against the fact they might see something in him and just think, what you start to want at a football club is continuity. And I think the key thing here, if they're going to, it looks with the transfer policy, they're looking to bring in players like Bergvall, 18s, 19, 20, that kind of, get them on probably long-term contracts. So you're going to have they're not going to be making marquee signings. That seems pretty obvious, I think. they're looking at this younger, kind of more long-term market. And if you do that, I guess you need senior pro coach. You know, you need a guy, or it's good to have a guy, possibly who's a halfway house. He's still a player, but he's kind of becoming a coach. He's still a player, so that the young guys will listen to him and have respect with him. But he also is involved with the coaching squad, and it's all about developing good habits. POSTECOGLOU obviously took a shine to him. In regard to Munn, I'm against Munn based on a photograph of him at the airport with Levy when they flew out to Germany to sign Tell. It's based on those corporate geezers. It's just based on him. He's just wearing jeans. And I think the point comes, for me, it starts to be offensive to wear jeans over the age of 40 anyway, I've got to say. It's just a view. And the way, I didn't like the look of him in a photograph. So I've taken against him purely from a photograph with Levy. I don't like the look of Levy in the photograph either, but it was Munn. You know the photo I mean, didn't you?
Yeah,
they're at a bar at London
yeah,
City Airport, I think it is. And so I've taken against him based on a photograph. Simple as that. And the other thing I was going to say with corporate types is corporate shenanigans. I always think of Adam Crozier. What is it? He was a football FA chairman, was he? Did he run ITV? Did he run Royal Mail? I might be wrong. But you think, so what is it about this guy? What genius thing has he got that he can do? And all these people, I do wonder, what have they got? And sometimes I think maybe they, you know, and I'm not commenting on Crozier, I don't know, but I just noticed this was this youngish guy that goes from top job to top job, you know. And sometimes I think it's just knowing how, not with him, as I say, so I'm not just talking about Alan Crozier now, but just generally, I wonder sometimes with them, is it that they, you know, they just understand the politics of it all, you know? It looks a very narrow gene pool to me, you know, and they're pretty boring. Remember, I'm a guy, because I was around the major record company scene, you mix a lot with corporate types. So, you know, I've really met a lot of these guys over the, you know, we love your new album, man. And, you know, and they don't even know who the fuck you are, you know, and you get taken around the offices. So I've known loads of them. So there's always that thing with it's just a really unreal, it's an air conditioned world. Those business hotels, and we stayed in a few of them, you know, they're really sort of kind of repressed, you know. There's not much pizzazz. And when they want to have pizzazz, they act double mental. So they like the old Cotswolds, you know, management week. It was shooting each other with paintballs and all that bollocks, you know. It's a funny fucking world, you know. And they're actually just really naff. At the end of the day, a lot of these people are David Brent from The Office, basically.
In a way.
So I don't know what that means, but that to me, you know, they're not fun people. Football's fun. They're not mad football people. Ange Postecoglou, big ego. It's all a bit of a laugh. And if he wins the Europa League, none of it matters. He's a rude Aussie. So what? Most Aussies are rude, and you know, and he's not a great communicator. So what? But he's won something. We can just have a laugh about it. It doesn't really matter. You know, the corporate thing is just this other world. And that, of course, is what Tottenham is. It's a very corporate entity. And I may yet still walk away from it, because the point comes where you're a mug punter. You know, the club, we should not forget that. And that's one thing, you know, I wouldn't want to see the heat taken off of the ownership and stewardship of the club as it stands, just on the basis of one victory, you know, because I still think it's not being well run in terms of looking after the proper guardianship of the club, as you know.
Yep. I must just share that picture, if you don't mind me, John, the one you're referring to about Scott Munn, just so everybody knows what you're talking about. There it is for our listeners.
Can you zoom up? Can you zoom up on it? And I'm sorry. I look at him. Right, I'll stop drinking 38 and I'll have a drink with anybody. Right, so put me in this situation where, you know, if you said, do you want to go and, you know, have a cup of tea with these two? I'd be, no, I don't. No, you know. So I think my attitude on this photograph, as I've taken against him, some people might think that's unfair. It's on the basis of this photograph. I feel it's probably best he leaves Tottenham. Just my view, based on one photograph.
I love that. Oh, that's funny. All we call is armchair experts. I'm sure that'll be further endorsed by that opinion. Right. I think we've covered that. We're going to try and move on if we can. I will, before we look ahead to Forest, just give everybody a bit of an update of where we are. There's been a few transfer rumours in amongst the Spurs community. So I'll try and bring them to very, very quickly if I can. Look, it's that kind of time of the year now where these rumours are coming thick and fast. Believe them if you wish to believe them. If you don't, totally understand it. You can be with Jason McGovern in that camp that you don't really care and you want to move on. We get that. There are reports suggesting that Christian Romero is not the only player Atletico Madrid are targeting. They're also understood to be targeting Rodrigo Bentancur. It's 2 for 1. I'm not too sure about how reliable these sources are, but maybe let's say keep an eye on what these next few months are going to hold with Bentancur. We were led to believe Bentancur was going to be signing a new contract with the club. That was preliminary agreed. We're still waiting for any kind of full official announcement on that. So at the moment, that is still very much quiet. But news coming out of Spain reports is that Bentancur is on the list of Atletico Madrid, along with Christian Romero. Another player Spurs do have an interest in, well, they've got to be real about this, Dean HUIJSEN of Bournemouth, a player that is going to reportedly snub Real Madrid. Not for Tottenham just yet, but it looks like he does want to remain in the Premier League. There's interest from Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester United, with Tottenham also expressing a serious desire to bring him to the football club. We're led to believe there's a clause of around 58 million that would have to be triggered to bring him to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. But again, you've got competition there from Chelsea, Liverpool, United, and I just wonder how interesting the player would be.
Unlikely.
Yeah, maybe unlikely on the Richter scale, I'm going to be honest with you. One more link that's come through, again, a fellow Bournemouth player, is Antoine Semenyo. Apparently, Man United currently the favourites to sign him, although Tottenham do hold an interest in the plan. Like Tim said earlier, at the moment, Spurs are kind of stressing that they're at a point where, like I said, in terms of the summer window, where they've already warned us, really pre-warned us that they'll only spend what they've got to spend. So look, if Tottenham
until we get 60, 70, 80 million pound of Champions League money, if we would, that should change the policy, shouldn't it? In theory.
Well, you'd hope so, but nothing's a given, right?
No,
nothing's a given.
But you would hope. I mean, they're gonna plan for it not to happen because it's not a guarantee. And we know that's we won a trophy for how long. But you would hope if we got that over the line. This is it's the crown jewels, isn't it? It's crown jewels. You get 8 games. It's
well on that point, and you're saying there about if we go on, it's the crown jewels. Before we look ahead to Forest very, very quickly, I'd want to get a quick answer on this round the table. How are we perceiving these next couple of Premier League games with Forest and Liverpool? I'm not saying we want to lose the games, but I mean, will there be a complete overreaction if we don't win the games and the manner performances are quite poor, like they were against Wolves? I mean, what would be in your mind, Tim? Depending, I know you're going to be there tonight at the stadium, singing, of course. But
I don't. I think because again, you can't take anything for granted. Again, if Lazio got through, and I know they're not the team they used to be, I think it'd still be a bit, oh God. I think most fans are expecting, whether it's right or wrong, to get to the final, and then you've got one shot at winning a trophy to get Champions League. So I would now think things would switch, whether it's right or wrong. So if we were to lose games and not get players injured, I think that would be the most important thing. And obviously now we're mathematically safe, which is ridiculous to even say. So yeah, I think you might find that, I don't know, it'd be interesting to see, because obviously things have been terrible in the league. We know that we've not been playing well. There's been no Ange ball.
Are you going to, Tim? Are you going to be upset if we lose these next couple of Premier League games?
I would be, because I listened to Ange's press conference. I do agree with what he says. So the best preparation for any European game is to bloody win games and play well, isn't it?
That's what he said. Yeah,
we did play well against Frankfurt. It was backs to the wall at times, but you can tell the players were fighting for it. What summed it up for me is Maddison going in for that ball. He knew he was going to get absolutely clattered, right?
Yeah.
So you can't question his commitment to that, and obviously the reaction afterwards. I just think you would hope, and again, this is just the theory of it all, that the shackles now come off a bit, because we've got this massive opportunity. It's a winnable tie, whatever you say, it's a winnable tie against Ghent. So you'd hope you'd start some momentum, and obviously football's all about momentum. We know that. If we were to lose them, I'm sure the view would be, well, we're just saving ourselves the European games. But I'd hope we'd be putting in some decent performances, and we've got some really hard games. So a lot of it's going to depend on team selection. And I'm sure, particularly tomorrow, Monday night, I'm sure it's going to. I'm sure it's going to make just rest players, because they put a shift in on Thursday. You won't want to risk anyone.
So
I mean, but obviously it's going to be different. I mean, had we lost, I think we'd be without a manager now anyway, and it'd be awful atmosphere to the end of the season. So at least there's that glimmering light of the shining trophy at the end of it, the crown jewels of Champions League. I don't know. I'm just happy to be still in the season with something to play for, because it could have been season over, couldn't it, on Thursday or Friday morning?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think any fan wants their team to lose, and certainly not put the effort or desire in. Again, Ange did say ahead of the Forest game that he is going to make 5 or 6 changes. He also actually said as well that it's quite important that we do put up a level of performance where, we're using these games as almost a momentum builder ahead of them. I mean, what's your take on that for you, Dee, these next 2? I mean, Liverpool really... I mean, look, we don't have a great record against Liverpool anyway. And if Liverpool beat us, they win the league. So, that, given our record at Anfield, that seems like a foregone conclusion. But how important is a performance for you, Dee, in these next 2? Or is it not the be-all and end-all for you? Is it a case of resting players so they're ready for the first against Bodo Glimt?
Look, the reality is, if we want to be the club that the fans want us to be, we can't afford to pick and choose what games we can win and lose. We should be looking to go and win every single game, regardless of the competition. I can understand the time of the season where we're at maybe now after what's gone on to a certain degree. But here's my big problem with it. As soon as any manager here makes rotations, it's almost like the fans feel like he's prepared to throw that game. That's not the way I see it. At the end of the day, with the amount of games in football now, you need a good 25-man roster to be able to work with, to be able to maintain all competitions. If that's your ambition, you need that. If you don't, that's when you do have to pick and choose and prioritize what games and stuff like that. And that's where that's my whole problem at Tottenham Hotspur. I don't think there's a recognition with the way modern-day football is going, the amount of games, that you need to fill out your roster with absolute quality if you want to be able to compete. But for me, I think it's an ideal opportunity. I don't think I think Brennan Johnson's place is up for grabs come that semi-final. I think maybe there's 1 or 2 others, especially at fullback as well. So I think there's a golden opportunity for some of these guys who have maybe been sitting on the periphery, maybe didn't enjoy sitting on the bench the other night, to actually go out there and showcase what they can do and try and nail down a place in one of the European semi-finals. And if that's not motivating for them, well, then out you go in the summer. It's not good enough. At the end of the day, who do these players think they are, that they can go out there and take their foot off the gas? I'm sorry, I'm not having it. At the end of the day, we're Tottenham Hotspur. Us fans want to win every game. So you go out there like that. Even if you are on the periphery, you go out there with a point to prove instead of going out there sulking. But also, in terms of how the fans are going to react, look, reality is every fan is firmly in their camp. You've got half that, not half, I think 20% that are probably Ange in, and the other 80% that are Ange out. And I think if we lose, people are going to use it to further why you should be out of the club. And if we win, people are going to use it further on why you should be in the club. That's just the way it's going to be between now and the end of the season. But the reality is, I think potentially you're going to see what maybe Amorim has alluded to at Man United, where, after their defeat at the weekend, they sort of said, is this how it's going to be between now and the end of the season in the Premier League? He said, yeah, look, our full focus is completely on Europe. And I think that's going to be the same.
I would say that. They've lost at home to Wolves this weekend.
Yeah, and like if I'm a United fan here now, I'd be livid, especially with the history that they've had and stuff like that. But reality is, POSTECOGLOU can send out the team. He can tell these, squad players that he wants them to go out and perform. But if people are already on the beach and they take their foot off the gas, what more can he do? So I think, these last 6 games, I think will be very telling on what squad players are actually fighting for the future and want to be here, and what players are looking to end the season off. And if they're looking to end their season off already, well, then it ain't right for us moving forward.
Just point on that as well. Would you not? Because obviously we've got a lot of players. We have so many injuries this season. You'd hope that the players that come in, they're fighting for their place at the club anyway, but then fighting for a place in the squad for the final. For the semi-final, and then you're also trying to get players back up to speed, aren't you, from injury? So whoever he puts out there, really, I agree with Dave completely. Should be giving it absolutely full beans, because we're going to need a full squad. Like, there's going to, hopefully, touch wood, there isn't, but there's going to be some injuries between now and then. Who's to say someone that turns up tomorrow and rips it up, might get a place in the semi because someone else gets injured in between. So there's still loads of games to go. That should be the attitude. It's not going to say it is.
I agree with Tim. I mean, but on that point, John, bringing you in, I think the thing was that, at the Wolves game, the feeling should have been that, if you play well against Wolves, you'll be picked for the first leg of the game that we had, obviously, against Frankfurt, the first leg of the semi-final, which obviously we did. Well, sorry, against Frankfurt, which we didn't see in terms of a performance. I mean, what's that in your mind, John, in terms of how we're going to navigate these remaining Premier League games, given the mood?
I'm absolutely, the worst thing they could do, the worst thing I think any team can do, in this situation is to kind of think, right, okay, put all the best players in mothballs, wait for 2 weeks till we play the game that really matters, because you then lose that edge, you lose that intensity. You're likely to go out there and get caught cold. I would like to see them play in these next 2 games with a deeper line, a little bit of a deeper line, to work these transitions. The transitions on the break weren't good enough last week. We didn't look like we could score in open play, you know? So I'd like to see a bit of coaching going there where we get the transitions, the breaks are quicker. So we draw teams in, and then so we start to play a football where we're not having lots of possession necessarily, you know? I'd like to see that. And I'd like to see, I thought most of the balls in, most of the corners, the dead balls were very good on against Eintracht. This was a great, you know.
Benteke or Romero should have scored.
We were beating the first man. Lo and behold, that hasn't happened since before Ericsson. Remember, Ericsson could never beat the first man. So I would like to see us go out there, rotate the squad for sure, but actually just play. Start practicing to play a little bit. Let's become this country's Atletico Madrid. I wouldn't complain at that, you know. And would that be lovely and ironic with this guy who plays beautiful football? You can still play great football. You can't tell me Ange Ball was that much better than Conte at the end of Conte's first season, because we played it out from the back at speed, and it was really. Remember, we caned Newcastle and Everton and all that.
Even the Arsenal game was incredible. There, the three.
I mean, really, really great stuff. You know, so you know, it's too much is sort of made of Ange Ball, and he's made a lot of it himself and wanted that done. And it's a bit like.
Do you think we have the front line to play that sort of football, and that's not more all down to tactics? Because you mentioned it there, you know, under Conte, but we had prime Kane, prime Son. You know, the quality since then has massively dropped off, and that's why I ask, you know, are we seeing it more so down because of the quality of player in the front line rather than tactics?
Well, that's absolutely right. At times, Dave, our championship, our front line looks a bit championship to me a lot of the time. And I think, you know, and you can't really argue with that, seeing on most seasons, they'd be on the verge of dropping into the championship next year, right? So, you know, I'm not saying something absolutely mental, you know. I mean, I would like to see, this is not going to happen. I'd like to see us play a 3-5-2 sort of formation. And just, I'd love to see us, because we get overrun in midfield so much. I'd like to see maybe find a place for both Kulusevski and Maddison. They're our 2 best players. Remember how we've seen them link up against City and all that. They're our 2 best players. You've got to find a way of getting Maddison in the game. And sometimes, you know, you do that by getting everyone a little bit closer, you know.
Yep.
And I'd love to see that. I would love to see Richarlison and Solanke, you know, suddenly play up front together, you know. But I wouldn't mind seeing Kulusevski as a second striker, Tell was a second striker, but obviously that's not going to happen because we've got these wingers. Unfortunately, they're not great wingers. Brendan Johnson's not a terrible player. By the way, the other night he actually made a couple of sprints, which I've not seen him do in a Tottenham shirt yet. Yeah, he actually made a couple of great runs at pace, because that's what I thought we were getting when we signed him from Forest, was a kid who could shoot down that right wing. So that was nice to see the other night. But our wingers, we let the best winger go. Manor Solomon's the best winger at that club, and we let him go to Leeds. You know, I've got no doubt about that, you know. And what we haven't discussed is Son. You know, I love the guy. He's a great player. But I enjoyed I was delighted when I knew he weren't travelling.
It's funny you say that, because I know a lot of people actually on Son, Dee, to come over to you actually on this point that, well, maybe, how can I put this with Son?
It's just done us a favour he wasn't available. That's what you're going to say, isn't it? Pretty much.
Yeah, but it's a weird, I mean, it feels maybe guilty saying that about Son, because he's been such a part of the football club. And I know someone actually said, I actually heard this on another show, another podcast, that are we going to be in a tough predicament, D, where if Tottenham do reach the final...
Oh, God, not again.
We're going back to that Harry Kane situation where if Son is fit, you've got to play Son in the final. You know, are we going back to that situation, D? Are we looking too far ahead to insinuate that? What do you
Look, let's not look too far ahead. We know at Tottenham Hotspur, you look at some of our European records, down the years, it's not great.
We lost to Madrid in prison, for God's sake. We can't get too far in ourselves.
Exactly, and we got thumped by them that night as well. We didn't just lose, we got absolutely thumped. But look, when it comes to Son, I do think, it's a case where part of it, I think the fact that we've sold Harry Kane, I think it's very easy for teams to look at us and double up down on Son.
You can see it, can't you? As I think John was alluding to that as well there. He really, really has missed Harry Kane since he's departed. You don't realise how good there was in front.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is with Harry Kane, he took a lot of the ball. He was the first focal point of attack. Yeah. And Son just could make runs off him a lot of the time or drop into positions to receive the ball. Whereas now, Son is usually our first point of contact. And that's why you've seen him lose a lot of ball, especially, last season when we were trying to put the ball into him that ended up being turned over in the back of our net and stuff like that. But also the fact that everything's gone into him, he's now bringing more attention. And honestly, if I'm the opposition manager with how Solanke and our right-hand side have operated this season, I'm telling my team, you stop Son, you have a chance of winning this game because I don't think the others have the craft to be able to create chances. So if you stop Son, you probably have a good chance of going on and winning this game. So I think go on.
I've got to say, Son was at his best for me when Kane was out. Remember the Champions League run-up final?
So many times.
His movement, and I know a lot of people I've known in the game really highly rated him. His movement was fantastic. I wonder if he's just lost that edge physically. It's a fine thing.
6 years ago, isn't it? That's the problem.
He's also lost a yard of pace to a certain degree as well. Yeah. When it comes to Son, I think we've got the problem that we were trying to maybe evade to a certain degree when we had Harry Kane, that we didn't want to be so reliant on one guy.
Exactly.
But most of this season, we're attacking down his side, looking to put the ball across for other people to tap home because they can't do what he does. So I would argue probably more reliant on one guy than ever before. And the fact that he's 32, 33 years of age now, you can't be relying on him week in, week out.
And he's not a winger, Dave. He's not a winger, is he? He's played as he's not actually a winger.
Do you know, I disagree with you on that. I think he is more suited to out wide than he is up striker. But I think the problem we've got is, we're playing him through injury. You're playing him through foot injuries and stuff like that. Like POSTECOGLOU alluded to in the build-up to the press conference that he's been playing through this for weeks. And that's the problem. We're so heavily dependent on the guy. At his age, we should be picking him out and putting him in, sort of saving him for the big games where we're looking for him to have that impact. But the fact that we're looking to play week in, week out, 90 minutes every game to save our ass, that's your problem. That he's absolutely tanked. He's got nothing left in the tank. When you get older and you get hit, the injuries become a little bit more sore, and that's where you have to protect your players a little bit. But we're not in a position where we can do that because the rest of the guys have either been out injured or been below par.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Yeah, agree. I would like to see at times. I would like to have seen Son and Kulusevski and possibly Maddison just given a freer role. But that doesn't happen with Ange, I don't think. For me, Son is not a central striker. But he's kind of lives in that area. He's like, I remind him of Mike Shannon, the old Southampton striker, down the channels. Look at a lot of his best move was down the channels, cutting in, getting out wide when it suited him to get the space and coming in. But he's not a guy who's a winger. He can make neat and tidy triangles, but he's not, for me, he's not a winger. Brendan Johnson, for me, isn't actually really a winger. He's a right-sided sort of striker, He's not a guy who can attack the fullback. Promising the other night, as I say, he made a couple of. At last, this guy's run 50 yards like at pace with a ball. Whoa, because he hasn't had the confidence to do that before, and he is. I know putting a few balls away at the far post, but I think you could get more from this Tottenham team than you are. And I think in this game, we've got to get this mindset. This is starting to get top level now. It's not as elite as it would have been in other years. But we've got to start we've got to make the most from the few chances we get. We've got to play parasite football for once.
Can I ask a final question before I do close on Forest very quickly? A quick five on Forest. I have to ask this: that hypothetically, Spurs have reached the Europa League final. The game is tomorrow. Is Heung-Min Son your starting lineup? Yes or no, John?
No, he's the guy that comes off. He scores the winning penalty.
See what he's done there.
He comes off the bench. He comes and the penalty shootout. He gets the winning pen.
I'd love to put a caveat in there to say if the guys, I was going to say this earlier, if the guys can get through the semi, let's imagine Son's not available, and they get through, I would definitely have him as a sub. But I just think now is probably the time to start thinking about the future, and I agree with Josh, have him as an impact sub, because I just think he offers more off the bench now than he does to start, which is horrible to say. I just think it's the truth for me.
Tell looks like he fancies the job as well.
He had a good first half, didn't
it?
Yeah. What do you reckon, D? Before we've got to close on Forest, D. How do you see that playing out?
They've been calling him bloody Dave all fucking night. It's Dean, isn't it? I'm getting deaf.
No, Dave.
Sorry,
it is Dave.
It is Dave.
Look, Jab, right, a lot worse. You can call me what you want.
So it is Dave. Fed up with that. I thought it's like fools and horses, isn't it? Calling it, but he is Dave. Why'd you call him Dean then? What's all that about?
No, but you know what? I think I would start Son, and the reason why is he's the only one in the squad that's been there in one of these occasions. No one else has, and I think that probably will stand to him. And I think you will need that guy in and around the squad, for that sort of game. So that's why I would play Son.
Cheers, Dave.
Yeah.
Or Dean.
Who would you rather? All right, Dave. Who would you rather have? Nico Williams or Son? Come on, be honest. Who would you rather have?
Oh, moving forward, probably Nico Williams.
I'm now laughing because I'm going back to that Fools and Horses system. Because what's Dave than a nickname? Oh, that's just what we call him.
I'm like Dave.
Oh, bloody love Trigger. Right. Forest, very quickly. For us as an audio, you're going to hear from the Garibaldi Red podcast. That's Greg over there for us. Not Greg's, the actual Baker's Greg over at the Garibaldi podcast. Charles killing me.
His name's Mike.
His name's Mike.
I still don't know if he's Dave or Dean. I'm confused. And I've done 2 shows with a geezer. I mean, that bloke, Trigger, who got the names wrong, he was a big Tottenham fan. I used to see him in the shelf.
I know. What's wrong with that bloke, eh? You must have gone mad. Oh,
he's the ex-manager, mate. He's the ex-manager, Trick.
It's when he was with the broom. He's got 12 different heads. They're 12 different things. It's still the same fucking broom. Right, we need to move on to Forest. Jar's got me swearing. Only Jar does this to me. No one else does this to me. Right, Forest to come. Nuno's return. I'm dead here. I'm on my feet, quite literally, like a lot of the Spurs squad. And I think I've shut them all down. Have I got you guys? Have I got you? Have I lost everyone? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
God, I'm losing my mind here. Forest to come, of course, for Tottenham tonight. For our listeners on audio, look, Forest, they're actually outside the top 6 for the first time in over 4 months. So this will be an interesting fixture as the way Forest are going to handle it, along with Tottenham. Look, we know in general our form in terms of the Premier League hasn't been great this season. I mean, I'll start with you, Dave. What are we expecting with Forest rolling into town? Nuno returning. Forest need the points, don't they, really?
100%. And look, at the end of the day, they spent 21 years down in the Championship. This is absolutely dreamland for them. And at the end of the day, I'll be surprised if their owner hasn't put an extra incentive on them making top 4, trying to bring home that Champions League. I do think that they are going to be highly motivated, to try and win this game. I think they sort of need to win it if they really want to stay in the hunt, for the last part of the season. I think losing to us, could probably put a nail in their coffin. But at the end of the day, look, I think what you're going to see with Forest is a team that's going to look to use their flanks. That's why I think someone like Spence and Udogie are absolutely important. I'd probably rest Pedro Porro. You've got Alanga and Hudson-Odoi, and what they're going to do is just look to find Chris Wood. And I think if we can stop the supply to Chris Wood, I think it gives us a massive chance of winning this game. Yeah,
I mean, again, lineup will be fascinating to see, won't it? I mean, you'll be in the stadium when they put that lineup out there, singing your heart out for us. How are you expecting the team to play out, given the fact Andrew's confirmed, as I said, in the pre-build up, he's going to make 5-6 changes for the game?
Yeah, I think, they're never going to have a better chance of getting, especially is it confirmed now 5 places getting Champions League, or close to?
Yeah, it's typical. The only season that we don't finish in the top 5 is to confirm a Champions League place. This club is actually cursed. This club is generally cursed as a footbtle club. Because next season we'll finish in the top 5, and you know what's going to happen? Once again, England haven't got the extra European place.
Yeah. I think obviously they've lost a couple of games recently. I think they'll be going in for it.
Yeah.
I just hope the feel-good factor again is just being the optimistic, half full rather than half empty. The whole squad experienced that win, didn't they? you would hope whoever comes in, like we've all mentioned before, wants to go for it, wants to be involved in the semi-final. I think it'll be a draw or we win 2-1. I've gone with prediction early doors here. I think we might win tomorrow. Honestly,
Okay.
I think we might win, especially with them sort of dipping in form and you'd hope we'd have enough to hit them with, especially at home. And I do think the atmosphere will be good tomorrow. I really do, because it's the first game since Thursday.
I mean, John, you said something interesting earlier that because Forest do need the points. It'll be interesting on how they do approach the game. If Tottenham do produce another kind of similar display to Frankfurt, where they actually soak up all the pressure and then look to maybe go on the counter, and actually produce a more resilient performance in terms of defensively, that actually might be our best way of winning the game. But whether we actually do that is another question. I mean, what do you actually think is going to be the way Ange plays, John?
I like to think they won't go toe to toe. They won't, because Forest will let them on, and it'd be so. It would really be depressing, and you start thinking, "Oh, this guy is not going to even. We're probably not going to win that if he can't just wise up now at this point and concentrate on winning specific football games. Rather than just go all out attack. So I'd like to think it maybe bring Danso in.
Yeah.
I'd like him to start
with Van der Ven. He's not going to risk him, is he? No chance.
I'd like to think he's going to rest at least one of them. Richarlison, I'd like to see start. I'd like to see Tell get a game. I guess Johnson would probably start on the right again. And as I said, I'd like to see. I would like to see Maddison and Kulusevski starting games together now. In
his games, Kulusevski in his games, he's got to start. He's got to start. He's come back, hasn't he? So.
Yeah.
Oh, John, prediction?
I'm always pessimistic, but I'm going to go with a 2-1 Tottenham win, last minute win, and I think we'll. I think after that, come on, surely the players will just be. Let's concentrate and focus. And let's make that the other night a beginning. Let's go out there and do the same thing again to this Forest team, who fancy themselves. Let's show we can match them. I'd like to see that. So I'm going to go Tottenham 2, Forest 1.
Just sounds far too logical that we'll do that, John. But I hope you're right. I mean,
well, I know this is it. We'd be back to some daft. We concede in the first 30 seconds. We're wide open. And they just take us to the cleaners, and that'd be so depressing, because you think, well, is that what's going to happen against Glimpse or against United if we face United in the final? Because United would have had a long time to consider us and how we play. So it might be nice to start to, just as I said earlier, why not take a leaf out of Atletico Madrid's book? 5-man midfield. I'd love that. I'd love it. But what we've got to do is we've got to get this. We're not threatening enough, are we? We get lots of opportunities to break, and we're not clinical enough. We're not determined enough. There's not enough belief in that. So that stuff needs. Tomorrow night's an ideal time to work on that.
Fascinating to see what they do. Dave will close me. I've now been conscious. I'm looking at something saying D. I've now changed it to Dave just so John doesn't think we've got a different guest on.
Yeah.
So it's just killed me earlier. That falls also analogies absolutely killed me. Dave, what we I'm over at Dave now. Dave, what we going for?
Do you know what? I think it's an ideal chance to build on the sort of goodwill factor and the feel good factor around the place. Do you know what? I'm going to go Tottenham 2-1 win. I think we can squeeze this. And I would really hope that there's a motivation. Nuno's coming to town. The last thing we want, especially after how fans got him sacked, back October a couple of years ago. You definitely don't want to be losing to this guy. So I'd hope there's enough motivation within to be able to get one over on them.
Got Nuno out of his family again, all round the pitch. You remember that first game? After we beat City in his first game, he had all his family around the pitch. And it's funny that when I remember back to doing those podcasts and when we had Nuno in charge, John, I think you were lucky you weren't on during that period. Everyone I spoke to said to me, that sounded really weird. We've won 3 games in a row. He's got manager of the month, but this ain't going to last. And Andy Costa, I love Andy.
I think Crystal Palace away happened.
I was at that. I was at that game and I thought this is this is when it's going to come off the wheels. And that kid, the one who went to Atletico Madrid, what's his name? The Chelsea player.
Oh,
no, the midfielder Chelsea. Yeah, Gallagher.
Against Gallagher,
He completely bossed the game. Yeah, Gallagher against Winks. Gallagher we made Gallagher look like Zidane basically in that game. And that game sits in my mind. A good mate of mine, guy who does a lot of my like the mastering with the records and all that caper with the manufacturer. He's a massive Palace fan, so I was signed up all day for the hospitality. So I had to suffer. You know, I couldn't just leave my head down. I was there for hours, you know, and with everyone saying, which we've had this season a lot with away games. Fucking hell, can't believe you're that shit. You know, I mean, I was at Everton and they like people all around me. Fucking hell, look at them. They were rolling up. And my mate saying, well, you said you were bad, but you really are bad. It's a joke. It's just the worst team worst team we've seen it for years. You know, they were saying there's FA Cup games we played against who were better set up than this. You know, Fulham away. I got mates with Fulham. I was over there with a couple of Fulham pals, and they're just sort of quite embarrassed for you. You know,
I mean, even the Chelsea one a few weeks ago, Chelsea fans were saying we're going to get beat here. I said, trust me, you've not seen this Spurs team recently. You'll be fine. Yeah. It's funny. You end up with the other fan base going, fucking hell, they really are that bad. I was like,
they really are. Terrible. I mean, Chelsea game. Thank you. I've got the ticket thanks to you, your mate. Yeah. No, I'm glad. I said to you, it's at my own risk, you know, and I hadn't been there for a while, and they nearly scored in 10 seconds. They nearly took the post. Unbelievable. And that was, you know, he's given it cup in his ear range and all that night. Oh, it was horrible. Horrible.
Do you know what, Jar? Based on that, you're right. And how sweet would it be to go and beat either Bilbao in Bilbao or Man United in Bilbao? Because that would just be two fingers up to everyone, right?
Yeah. That'd be a big thing.
It's going to be an interesting next few months in store. That's fair to say. In the life of Tottenham, we'll be there for it, suffering as we will be.
And maybe Ange will end up building a dynasty in spite of Enquiries. Yeah, who knows? I doubt it, but you know. Yeah. We'll see.
I thought you just transported me into another universe there, John, for a second. Who knows? Who knows? I feel like I've just watched another episode of Black Mirror then for a second, the Tottenham edition. John was starting to talk there. Stranger things have happened. Who knows? It's been football. It's a wonderful Jah Wobble one. John, people keep saying to me, they always ask me, are we going to try? We will get Jah back on for the end of the season because I know everyone loves you out there and you do keep the saying in what the man is with Tottenham. And you will tell
I love you all. As I've said it before, you look at the managers, the players, you know, the owners. It's the supporters are the biggest thing of a football. They're the continuity, the identity of a football club more than anything else. And Spurs fans are the most loyal. We get a bum rap for being horrible. And away from home, the loyalist fans, you know, and we deserve some success. This has gone on for too long. Yeah.
Absolutely. John, thank you so much. John is back on tour. Oh, he's actually still on tour. I say back on tour. He's on tour all the time at the moment. So
never really stops. Basically, I take a couple of months off and the rest of the time I'm working and that's it. I was ready today, got to check the dates of the Glint, but quite ready to cancel any shows if they clashed because I can't. It's impossible. I can't be having that. But so Miss said, would you actually cancel them? I said, I have done in the past. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I used to book my tours around Tottenham's away games in Europe in the 70s and 80s. So it used to be wonderful times, you know, and I want them back again. That's when we used to go away and try and win the games. Whereas all through this last 10 years, when we're in the Europa League or some 2 years in the Champions League, we're not in it to win it.
Dave always rules off the teams when we got beaten away, Dave, haven't you? You've always got them ready to rule off. We've got Lask. God, there's been some bad ones.
Lad, you've Patras Tavera, Vitesse Arnhem, NS Mora, Dynamo Zagreb. I mean, the list goes on.
Juggernauts in European football, exactly.
Well, it was one of them. That wasn't the gaffer. It was in Nick, one of the teams we played. He'd been arrested, and we still lost. Only Tottenham. Yeah.
Oh, what a season, John! We're going to see you very, very soon. Of course, Dave at the Irish Hotspur. Dave, please check Dave out. Dave, you're going to be back on here before the end of the season. I mean, it's going to be a fascinating next few months, isn't it, as Tottenham fans? I mean, I know there's a lot of division right now in the fan base with regards to the manager, but this is going to be very fascinating and these next few months play out.
Look, it's going to be interesting. At the end of the week, at the end of the day, a week is a short time of football. This week we're absolutely buzzing. Next week we could be absolutely melting down again. That's just the reality of being a Tottenham Hotspur fan. But look, it's all about tomorrow. Let's get in the lumberjack outfits and let's go and commit some deforestation. Let's go.
Love that, Dave. Love that, Dave, not Dean. Dean, who you calling Dean? It's definitely Dave. Let's close with Tim.
Dick or anything else like that. You know what I mean? So I'll take it.
I'm dead, honestly. John's killing me. I love him. Tim, let's close with you. Tim, reminder, where are you in the stadium? Where can everybody find you?
Yeah, so we'll be in the White Hart, which is level 5, East Block. So again, before the game, which was singing all the old Spurs song sheet stuff and some other stuff we've written. Which even this season, I've got to say, our fans are just my opinion on the away fans are just amazing. Even the home fans. Even though it's been disastrous, you still get that buzz. Everyone still sort of gets involved and stuff. And obviously, hopefully, we can make it a good celebration on a couple of reasons. Well, two wins in a week, eh? How amazing would that be? So, and that'll be tomorrow. And obviously, you can find me at Tim_Winstone. All the Spurs stuff's on my YouTube if you want to check it out. And it's all sort of free to stream and stuff. So, yeah.
I mean, with a season we've got, Tim, we probably need some more new songs, don't we? So make sure you give Tim any new songs that come to mind.
Anything, just DM me. Again, you can't get me on YouTube or on X.
Tim, I won't say this, mate, because I love you very much. The funny thing is, when we've created that song for Wilson Odebear, isn't it funny that in the season that Wilson Odebear's had, that Pedro Neto's now going to make more appearances than Odebear, scored some really important goals. You could have it up.
I've got a comedy story in this. So my son is Alfie. Shout out to Alfie. He's 4 on Tuesday. So we play with. Look, I don't want to listen to all the same stuff that I bloody play all the time. So he's listening to this song. He starts singing up to it. Oh, well, with Wilson Odebear, right? Goes to the nursery and I pick him up. And the nursery lady goes, she's been singing this great song. She's been singing Living on a Prayer, but he keeps saying this word, Wilson Odebear. Who's that? And I was just literally crying. Even my son's doing it at 4 years old. So, I mean, to be fair, you never know. He might pop up in the European final. You never know.
What if it was a Spurs fan? You need sectioning singing that at 4 years old, the poor kid.
I reckon I was going to get child protection phoned up that very night for that. So, hopefully.
Can I just say, I think Tim does absolutely great work for the fan base. And I think for fans like me who can't get to games every single home game and stuff like that, I do encourage people to get over and check out Tim's work because it can actually help create that atmosphere, make you feel a part of it by listening to his songs and that. And he's got a good collection there. So I do encourage
music and football,
in my situation to get over there, because it really does help build up the games for yourself at home.
I don't know.
Music and football just goes together, don't they? It's always gone together. It's montages of every game and stuff. And particularly England with Stop Crying Your Heart Out. That's been used about 25,000 times. So The only problem's going to be this season is that the Stop Crying Arteta song that's got now 6 choruses. I'm just hoping that doesn't have to be deleted from YouTube if they do the unthinkable. So
we're all going to have to be emigrate. I tell you what, we might have to all emigrate depending on what happens. Look, we've got to think about that. Listen, we're going to
here's one for you. Would you rather them win the Champions League if we win the Europa League, or would you rather them lose? I'd rather them win it and we win it. I would. I've got to say,
we've got to get this trophy drought off our back.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Do you know what? On that one, the league. Yeah, I think the league would be hard to stomach, wouldn't it? Because the best sign of a team is winning the league.
The problem is that they really want the Champions League, don't they? Because they've never won it before. But I mean, again, it's conflicting. I see a lot of listeners and audio, or viewers saying lose it. We've got to get this trophy monkey off our back. We've got to get. What do you reckon, Dave?
No, look, we've got to look after ourselves. We can't. Look, at the end of the day, I'm not worried about Arsenal. They're going to take care of themselves. A couple of years ago when they're in the hunt for the Premier League, people text me, I'm really worried. Look, they're going to choke it. They choke just as bad as we do. They pretend they don't, but they do. So they'll take care of themselves. They'll probably go out to PSG.
I've got Ange. I can hear my mind going, shut up and focus on us.
I would actually make Arsenal favourites for that Champions League. I would, I'm afraid to say. I think they're going to have a bit much defensively for PSG and Barcelona, They've got PSG next, didn't they? Yeah.
Yeah. I just think the summer we're going to have, though.
The thing is, if we don't win it and they win it, I mean, God,
We're going to have to. I don't know what we're gonna do.
Imagine we win it and they don't win it, though.
Oh,
What about
brilliant.
that?
Yes,
Yeah.
Now, that's the sort of thinking that I like.
Let's leave that in
Yeah.
the atmosphere, and we're going to
Yes.
go. I want to say a massive thank you to the wonderful musician Jah Wobble. I want to say a massive thank you to David at the Irish Hotspur. Please hit that subscribe button. I want to say a massive thank you to the wonderful Timmy Winstone over at Spurs Song Sheet. And of course, on X, he's in that stadium for us later on tonight, where you'll be finding all your pre-match mood for Forest at home. It's Nuno's return. It's time for Tottenham to try and get some stabilisation to their league form as they head in to the final battle of the season. Thank you so much for your support. Over 5,000-6,000 have watched us live. Keep liking, keep subscribing. As always, keep safe, keep well, and come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you